right? Looks like we are live. All right, guys. So today we're going to talk about connectedness and three types of connections that I think are really important, especially to the healing process. For myself, I remember when I was really early in my recovery journey and going through healing and therapy and all of this kind of stuff. Hello, welcome. That I had. I was dealing with a lot of feeling disconnected from um, a spiritual source, disconnected from myself, disconnected from the people around me. I felt really outside of, uh, excuse me, hang on just a sec here, guys. I just have to deal with somebody here. And there we go. Sorry. Having to deal with some TikTok trolls. Okay, so talking about connectedness and dealing with those kind of things. I'm doing well, Jot. Thank you. How are you? Um, so, a lot of times when you have grown up in an environment where you have experienced abuse or whether that's physical or emotional abuse, emotional neglect. Those things can often leave us feeling very disconnected and isolated. And even if we're physically surrounded by a lot of people, I think sometimes those have been the times that I felt most alone, is when I was surrounded by a bunch of people. And those were always challenging times for me. And because I didn't quite know how to get that emotional connection. And it wasn't something that was demonstrated. And the only way that I was able to really get that connection is if I made myself useful. So I was always doing things to work, to show that that I was helpful in some sort of way. And I learned to stay quiet. Those are the things that I grew up as ways of feeling safe and connected, at least not causing any more additional trouble than what was already happening in the environment that I grew up in. And so for me, learning to build a connection, one that I had as a child that was something that offered me quite a bit of strength in the times that were challenging, was a belief in God. And for me, that is a more Christian faith, although I probably don't fall into the full category of Christians. I don't go to church on a regular basis, although I have gone to church on and off throughout my life, and got some help from that. But again, it's not that I had any trouble with God's word or the Bible, or well, so sometimes the Bible, I will I will say that, but I it was sometimes it was the lack of connection, the lack of empathy from some of the people that were there within the church environment. The rigidity, the control, those kind of things made it very difficult for me to feel comfortable in those situations. And that has a lot to do with the fact of what I grew up in and the narcissistic abuse that I received from the abuser that sexually abused me. One of the many, but he was the one that was very deliberate and very manipulative, and he would turn things around so that it was my fault. So that was very difficult, and the more I fought back, the worse things got. And so there were always some challenges that way. So learning to build a connection with myself was one of the things that I had to do. So I had a strong connection with God. When things got really rough, that's who I turned to. I would talk to God, and I would pray, and I would seek guidance. I would ask for support. And this was something that I always just did very quietly to myself, um, in my room at night, no big fanfare or anything. And it was usually just a simple prayer. And it wasn't until I got older, and I started to learn more about deliberately cultivating a faith and a belief in a power greater than myself, that I started to look at how can I develop this when I really was quite jaded, and I didn't really believe. By that time, I was very logical, very science oriented. You had to be able to see it to believe it, kind of thing. And it wasn't until I started to develop, I had a person tell me, if you don't believe, then start with that. Start with that. Start saying, okay, you know what? I don't think I believe in this whole spiritual stuff, and I'm just going to test it. I'm going to try some things. And I'm like, okay, I can try by proving it wrong. So that's what I would do. And I'd be like, okay, I don't think this is going to work, but you said to do these actions. So I took those actions, and I was like, oh shit, this actually works. This started to help. And so asking for help, asking for guidance, asking for direction really started to help me. And building that connection with a power greater than myself was the biggest turning point for me. And it's one that I am most reluctant to talk about, yet it is the thing that helped the most for me. And it's really quite amusing, because I don't know how to exactly define it, because it's not full proper Christian, and it's not crunchy granola spirituality. I call it crunchy granola, please, no disrespect, but more like the tarot crystals, bond with nature kind of side of things. And so just understanding that different side of spirituality and feeling connected. Hey Joy, welcome. Good to see you. Thanks for typing in on the Facebook chat. I usually don't see too many people on here on Facebook, but I do the lives here anyway. So welcome. So guys, if this is your first time joining me, by the way, I forgot to introduce myself. My name is Tina. I am a happiness coach, and I help people with feelings of depression, anxiety, anger, frustration, sadness, grief, dark thoughts, suicidal thoughts, and I help you by sharing my personal experience, strength, and hope. And I do this not only by sharing my personal experience and what I've done to get through this, that I help you transition to a happier place. And I share also my skills in change management that I used in corporate for over 30 years. And so learning these things, that they work, whether you're using this for your personal life or your professional life. These are tools, these are strategies that I use still to this day. And I use these to help transition that happy place, right? So building that connection with a higher power, with a God of your understanding. And so I talk to my God exactly. Like, I don't follow a special technique. I don't follow a special prayer. It's more a thought in my head where I talk back and forth with God, and I talk not only just with negative things and what it is that I want, but I show appreciation, I show gratitude, I will thank him for certain things that that I see. And it can be something really simple. It's like, wow, this is a really amazing day that you got going on here, God. it's really, really simple things. So I will talk in that kind of conversational tone like he's my best friend. And I don't know, maybe as a kid, maybe a psychologist would say that's your imaginary friend or whatever it was. But it was just believing in a strength, in something outside of myself. And I think children naturally do this. And as adults, we learn to forget that. And I think part of healing, part of doing the inner work is learning to remember this part of ourselves. And so tapping into that and really embracing that. And I had to do it in a way that I remember I had lost my cat. I've talked about this story before, but I'm going to tell it again. And I had lost my cat. We had moved to a new place, and it was like a two-story apartment, townhouses. So there were like townhouses that were 2 stories, and then on top of that, there was another set of 2-story townhouses. And so it was kind of like a mini apartment complex, but we had the top one, and so it's kind of like the 4th floor of a building. And we had just moved in, and my cat Sam, he had getting used to the place, looking out the windows and stuff like that. Well, one of the screens was loose, and I don't know if he tried to get a bird or something, or if he was just laying against the screen, but it gave way, and he must have fallen out the window and fell 4 floors. And where he landed, I could see that there was some blood. And so I was very worried about my cat, and I was distressed, and I was looking for him. I knew he was hurt, and he was lost, and I didn't know where he was. And for a week, I searched high and low. Every moment I had, I was out there in the apartment complex searching for him, calling for him, devastated that I had lost him. And by the 7th day, I was kind of like, you know what? I was driving to work, and it was a Friday morning, and I remember, because I had been talking with my friend, and they said, well, give it to God, right? So I was like, all right, and I was mad. So you don't want to make me mad. I get pretty lippy when I'm mad. But I was mad, and I was like, all right, fine. If there is a God, then bring back my fucking cat. And I just let it go. I went to work. I was annoyed. I was tired because I had been up so late looking for my cat and everything. And then by the time I came home, I was so tired. I was just like, you know what? I can't look for him tonight. I'm just going to go to sleep. And why that's significant is that is a physical act of just letting go, of release, of, you know what, I don't know how to fix this. I don't know how to solve this problem. This is beyond my capabilities, and I've done everything in my power up until this point. So I have no other choice but to let go, to surrender, to believe that, and in fact, I didn't actually believe as I went to bed. I was just like, I don't give a shit anymore. And so I tell this stuff as a real way because I know that when people spoke this authentically, it actually helped me. And I was like, oh, I can have a connection with God and it can be like that? Oh, okay, great, fine. I'm going to try this and see if this works for me. And guess what? It actually worked. And the funny thing is, so I had said that prayer in the morning, and as lippy as it could possibly be, and I'm sure most Christians are rolling over in their grave going, no, that's not the right thing, Tina. You're not teaching the right thing. And I'm like, but this actually worked. This actually worked for me, because if I wasn't able to have this kind of connection, I'd have no connection. And so I think this is still better than none. And this is a really strong connection for me, and it has carried me through some very, very dark times. And so I prayed that prayer in the morning, bring back my fucking cat if there is a God. And that night, we got my cat back. And here's the story of how that happened is my mom had been working afternoon shift. She came home late, and she didn't know if I had walked the dog because I went to bed early. And so she decided she was going to take the dog out for a walk. and she went to go walk her normal route, and the light on the pathway flickered and went out. So it was lit and then it went out completely, and she was like, oh, it's too dark to walk down that way. I'm going to go this different way. So she walked around the apartment building a different way. And as she was coming back to the front door, she heard a rustle in the bush and she thought she heard a cat. And she was like, Sam, is that you? And then she heard the cat go, "Meow," and she's like, oh my God, it's Sam. The dog's freaking out, and she grabbed him. She got her arms all scraped up in the bushes, and she dragged him in, and she woke me up, and she flipped on the light. She's like, I found him, I found him. I was like, and I started scream crying, and I realized, I'm like, oh shit, I guess that means there is a God, and he brought back my cat. So thank you. Don't strike me down with lightning. So that is one of the stories if I ever doubt that there is a God, I go back to that story, and that is one that allows me to feel connected, and it allows me to connect with God in a way that is authentic to me, that works for me, and to know that He is actually strong enough. God is actually strong enough to handle me even in my worst moments. So being able to tap into that unconditional love, that true unconditional love, is really important, and it is something that is a pivotal, crucial piece for my healing, my recovery, my source of strength. So being able to tap into God on that kind of level is so important. The second one is building the connection with ourselves. So whether we've been through trauma in your childhood or not, being disconnected from ourselves is going to be a great source of pain. And and when I say disconnected from ourselves, it's a matter of understanding what is it that we value, what is it that we don't value, what is it that we need to embrace. And when we live in unalignment with our own personal values, right, then that will cause us a great amount of pain. So when we move ourselves to connect with ourselves, oh, thanks, Joy, you believe the same about God? That's great. I'm glad to know that. I thought I was alone out here with this, but that's great. I'm glad that we were able to connect that way. So learning to connect with ourselves was, it's an ongoing process of being able to understand and evaluate what are the things that are important to me, what are the things that I believe, what are the things that I value, and looking at the discrepancies in our behavior to what it is that we believe, and then bridging that gap. So the larger the gap, so if I believe in hard work and telling the truth and being honest and being open and being loyal and all those kind of things, and I am forced into a situation where those attributes, those characteristics are not valued, then I have to act in a way in order to follow social norms or the environment that I'm in, whatever it is. I have to align myself to whatever it is in order to survive. And if those are out of alignment with my own true personal values, it's going to cause a great deal of pain. And when we have been through a lot of trauma, a lot of abuse in our lives, we often will seek out various coping mechanisms. And in fact, that was one of the ways that I ended up in therapy, is because I had finally gotten to a point where my behavior, my characteristics, my actions were so out of alignment with what I truly valued that I went, this is not who I want to be. I don't even recognize who I am. How did I end up being this way? And I didn't understand, how could I continue to live one way and yet believe another, And when that pain got great enough, I finally um, broke down and said, okay, I'm going to take this therapy thing a lot more serious. Whereas before it was something that I was kind of being forced into, and I went into therapy trying to prove that there was nothing wrong with me because I was the girl with a good head on her shoulders. I got good grades. I didn't do drugs. I didn't drink. I didn't party. I worked as well as went to school. So on the external, everything seemed fine with me. Um, but it wasn't. And I didn't understand why I could keep doing things that I didn't want to be doing, yet I didn't feel like I could say no to those things. And so, and it had to do around promiscuity and stuff like that, that I didn't feel good enough to be able to say no because I felt it was more important to not upset the other person. And I didn't understand that that was directly connected to being sexually abused. And I was like, logically, obviously that makes sense, but at the time I couldn't see it. I couldn't see how what I was going through, what I was doing, that inability to say no. And it wasn't just in those extreme situations, it was something very minor. It's like, do you want to go to this restaurant? And I really didn't, but I wouldn't say no because I was more concerned with what other people wanted, what they wanted. As long as they were happy, then I was happy. And that left me feeling extremely unhappy for a very long time. So learning to connect with myself and understand what it is that I actually wanted, what I don't want, what I like, what I don't like, and learning to speak up and advocate for myself was one of the biggest things of being able to heal and to become happier, right? And I don't know, I guess maybe some people take that for granted if they were given enough self-esteem, or they expect themselves to be happy, or they expect themselves to have certain outcomes. And I think that is a healthy thing of that we expect to be treated good, that we expect to be treated with respect and dignity, and that our bodies, our thoughts, our emotions are valuable. And so when we start to learn those things, and we start to act in alignment with that, the more we do that and act in alignment with who we truly are at our core, the happier we will become. And it's when we start behaving out of alignment of who we truly feel we are, that that's when the dysfunction, that's when that unhappiness, the depression, the anxiety, the frustrations come out. And so it's a matter of learning, doing that inner work to truly understand who we are, what is important to us, what is in alignment with us, and what is out of alignment with us. Now, that doesn't mean we can't grow, we can't change, we can't expand our boundaries, we can't challenge ourselves to try new things or adapt or change, because I think that's all part of the human experience, and we are able to, the more that we're able to connect with God, with ourselves, then that's when we can start building stronger connections with other people. And that usually, this was another thing that was a challenge for me, and still probably is a little bit of a challenge for me, I'm not going to lie. But so the women in my family were all very strong women, very masculine in their nature. They've been through a lot. Hello. And so I learned to be very independent. My mom was a single mom. She worked her full-time job, and she was also the superintendent of an apartment building. She did that so that she could get cheaper rent for us to be living there. And so she took care of cleaning and the garbage and all of that kind of stuff, any of the tenant issues, collecting rent, all of that kind of stuff on top of her full-time, very physical, hard labor job that she had to lift very heavy things that this role was normally designated for a man to do. And so she's very tough. My aunt, she was a nurse. She also worked at the same place that my mom did. And then my grandmother also worked in a psych ward. Very, very strong women that are, it was normal for them to take the lead. So learning to be independent, and I didn't really connect with what I call our girly girls. And so learning to do hair or makeup or any of that kind of stuff, no, it's like I want to talk about work. And so I ended up going into a field of transport and logistics, which is mostly male dominated. There were a few women that are in transport and logistics. There's a lot more now, obviously. But when I was in there, there was maybe one or two token women, and they were usually very, very strong, independent women as well. So those are the kind of women that I tend to connect with. And so part of my recovery journey was learning to connect with same sex, because I was very used to hanging out with the guys, because I hung out with my cousins, and they were like my best friends. So my cousin Gary, he was a troublemaker. We'd get into all kinds of trouble, skipping school together, doing all kinds of bad stuff. But I was around to kind of keep it from going too bad, but he was enough to keep it exciting, right? So my cousin Gary, loved hanging out with him, but he was always forever getting into trouble, and I was always helping. But he was a real lifesaver, literally, and he was the one that I called when I was going through my suicide attempt. And so when I called to say that I love you, and that was enough of a red flag for him to realize something was very, very wrong. And he's like, I'm coming right over. And he called the bar that my mom was at, and called everybody to come. And that's when I went to the hospital. So part of the recovery process for me was learning to build stronger connections with other women. And I did do that. I had my entire 20s, I had a lot of female friends that we would talk for hours, we would go out, we would do things, and we had something in common. And I had a lot of 12-step friends, and a lot of connections. We'd go to not only events or conferences and stuff like that, we would plan other things as well. Like we went whitewater rafting. There was a group of friends of us. That was so freaking fun. I loved that. But so I learned to develop stronger connections with same sex, which I hadn't really done because there was a lot of isolation in the environment that I grew up in. I didn't like to bring friends home because things were too unpredictable. I didn't know how, if his drinking was going to get out of hand, if he was going to do anything to them that he did to me. So I didn't bring any female friends home. And when I tried to bring male friends home, that was even worse. And he viciously attacked them as well, as if they were a threat to him. And I remember being horrified by one, because he was very cruel with things. And so that, growing up, I didn't have a lot of friends that came home. Neither did my brother either, right? So most of the time it was just us playing, or usually fighting together. But that was just kind of how we grew up. So part of the recovery process for me was not only building that connection with God, building a connection with myself, but learning to build a connection with other same-sex friends, right? Learning how to be a girl. And so now when I got married, though, I dropped all of my female friends, all except for my coworkers. And my coworkers were my only connected friends. Now, they were also my friends outside, like before I got married as well, but I only had a couple that I hung around with and still stayed in contact with. Now, these are all very strong women, so even though we don't connect on a regular basis, that even when we do connect, it's like we pick up where we left off, right? You know, so it's just things change as you go along, right? You don't have as much in common, especially when we had the common ground of work. So learning to reconnect with other women is something that is very important, and it's something that I now have to rebuild that piece. And so I've recently started to connect with some women in a Facebook group, and they're local, and so that's been fun, just kind of getting to know people as we visit and buy things from each other. So shopping, women connecting through shopping, that's amazing. So yeah, that's what we've been connecting through lately. And so learning that connection, and then when you have that connection, and for men it's similar, is men connecting with other men, needing that support from other men. And then when you have that, that is when you can connect properly in a relationship. Without those support structures in place, it makes it very challenging. It's like that gives you a 4-pillar, very strong foundation of when you can connect with God, when you can connect with yourself, when you can connect with others of your same sex. Now, this is a little bit different, and I'm not going to get into, you know, if you're attracted to the same sex, that's a different story. Then you have got maybe a 5-leg table instead of a 4-leg table, right? But whatever that is for you, I'll trust that you know what is best for you, but it's learning to connect in those ways. And so but it's that romantic relationship, whatever that is for you, you need that friendship support first before you can build that romantic connection, and then learning to keep those other connections even when you have that romantic connection is important as well, in order to be your fullest, most happiest self. So those are things that I think are really important. They're part of the healing process, and there's lots of strategies, lots of things that I've done along the way to be able to help with those things. But I wanted to talk about connectedness. Wow. It's late. I'm tongue-tied. I've been doing a lot lately, so bear with me. But on that hilarious note, it is the connectedness and being able to form those connections. And if any one of those starts to get a little bit weak, it's a matter of putting the energy and the effort into building that back up so that you can have that full emotional fulfillment. And I think it's when we do these things that we really, that's how we know that we've healed, because we've healed the wounds from the past by being able to take our power back and be able to live a life that is full, that is rich, that we can truly, authentically be happy with. So guys, with that, I'm going to wrap up today. If you haven't already, I invite you to go to my YouTube channel, Coach Tina B 125. Click on the subscribe button and you will get notified when I upload the replays of the lives. And forgive me, I am a little bit behind. I've got a lot that I've got to catch up on in getting the videos uploaded and tied in with my artwork. And the reason I've been behind is because I've been so busy selling a lot of my artwork that I've kind of had to rejuggle a few things. So yeah, it's a good problem to have, a very good problem. So guys, I hope you found this helpful, and I appreciate those that made comments and joined in and showed energy, tapping the screen, sharing the live. I really appreciate you for that. So thank you so much, and we will see you again tomorrow. Have a great night. Bye.